Minutes ago, a Pakistani vessel has been intercepted by the Coast Guard in Porbandar. The Coast Guard chased the suspicious Pakistani fishing vessel off the coast of Porbandar before the suspicious Pakistani fishing vessel blew itself up. I have Jugal Purohit joining me live from the capital. Jugal, you have the Navy statement or rather Coast Guard statement with you. Tell us more about the details of this entire operation.
Vedika, for our viewers' understanding, let's keep this input first and foremost. That
yes.
For the last 2 months, there have been a series of intelligence warnings about the possibility of terrorists or anti-national elements utilizing the maritime border and the porousness of the same to actually intrude into the Indian side. Now, it's keeping that in context that on the 31st, in the evening of the 31st of December, a very specific intelligence input of a certain boat starting from the Porbandar area of Karachi for some what the government calls it illicit transaction in the Arabian Sea. That boat had started off. It crossed the international maritime boundary line that is existing between India and Pakistan. The Coast Guard aircraft was observing it for a very long time, after which when it made the crossover, a Coast Guard ship was also in the area and was diverted accordingly. Now the Coast Guard ship gave it a chase for almost 10 nautical miles according to my understanding and what I've spoken to sources. After that particular time elapsed and all through, the Coast Guard was warning this particular boat to stop its endeavor and stay up for surrender, but it did not do so. In fact, it tried to actually execute an evasive maneuver, which is when a few warning shots were also fired. Now, the government tells us that after this firing of a few rounds, 4 personnel who were seen on board the particular vessel went under the boat and a fire started, which was followed by explosions, and bad weather and rough winds ensured that no relief rescue effort could be mounted, and thus there are no survivors and the boat has now practically at the bottom of the sea. That's what the situation the government is informing to us about. Now, what does this tell you? It tells you that in the past there have been several cases where Pakistani fishing boats have been nabbed in Indian waters, but they've all followed whenever challenged by an authority like the Coast Guard or the police. They've all followed the norms. They've been arrested. Why did this boat particularly not stop? Now, if Pakistan was to actually hit out at India, the real question is, why is it that Pakistani nationals who were on board, why is it that till now Pakistan has not spoken about it? It's only by the Indian government side is when the first information is coming in. Why is it that Pakistan has not raised an alarm about its missing personnel if they were genuine people? So these are some of the questions which are actually arising out of this particular episode. And never before, Vedika, let me reiterate, in fact, never before has a boat come in so far and then attempted to evade. It's always been the case that when challenged, these boats, personnel on board, have always given themselves up for inquiry. Yes. This boat did not do so. So there is an obvious context in which this boat came in, and then the actions which took place after that also follow a certain pattern. And as I said, it's the Indian government which is informing us all. It's not the Pakistani administration informing us about any of their innocent personnel or fishermen being hit. It's the Indian administration which is informing us of an intelligence input, and which has been then followed up accordingly with the help of the agencies and the Indian Coast Guard. Back to you.
Do stay with me. I have Deputy Editor Shiv Arur also joining me live from the newsroom. Shiv, what we do know is that 4 people were on board. What we do know is that it was intercepted by the Coast Guard. Well, this does, Shiv, point to an anti-India link. What we don't know is whether there were people on board to be brought to this side of India. What we don't know is whether there was narcotics on board, but clearly an anti-India link.
Absolutely. Suspicious movements, the manner in which this particular boat responded when warning shots were fired, the time of this operation. Fishing boats are never out, so late, at least so far, unless they're lost. And even if they are, as Jugal correctly pointed out, if warning shots are fired, there is a certain protocol that all such vessels are, fully aware of. The simple fact of the matter is the intelligence alert, Vedika, that was sent to the Coast Guard and to the Marine Police in Porbandar just 4 hours before this very dramatic sort of chase that took place 365 kilometers off the coast of Porbandar took place was the intelligence note, my sources tell me the intelligence note very specifically said contraband and or lethal materials on board that ship. It didn't say anything about narcotics. It didn't identify explosives. It didn't say anything specific. It just said contraband and or lethal materials. Now, what we have are the circumstances, of this chase, which have been revealed only through this very brief press release from the Indian government, where it says that 4 people were identified on board that vessel. They actually went into a below deck chamber on that particular vessel. These are not very big vessels. They're quite small. So a small, below deck chamber is where they went. And apparently, the visual evidence suggests, according to the Coast Guard, that they attempted to destroy the vessel by setting it on fire, and then it blew up. Now, no survivors have been found so far, even though an attempt was made by the Coast Guard to look for them. But the circumstances under which it happens are, uniformly suspicious. The boat didn't yield, it didn't respond, it did not make any move to submit itself. When warning shots were fired, it actually made an evasive maneuver, which is always interpreted as a hostile move. So clearly there was something uniformly suspicious about the manner in which this boat was behaving. Its intentions were completely unclear. It did not make any move to identify itself or its intentions. Instead, on the other hand, it tried to not only get away from the Coast Guard vessel, but to try and perhaps destroy some kind of evidence. And the people on board, at least so far, it appears that they may have perished in this accident, because the entire boat actually went down in that fire and the ensuing explosion. So at this point of time, what we do know is that 2 things are happening very importantly, Vedika. One is that through air surveillance and through the Coast Guard vessels as well as Navy vessels, there will be an attempt to either collect some kind of material evidence to try and somehow figure out what was on board that ship, where precisely in the Porbandar area it came from. Remember that stretch south of Karachi, the Porbandar area has several different depots from which fishing boats actually leave. There has been illicit trafficking that has been identified in this particular area in the past as well. It's something that the Indian government has taken up with Pakistan in the past as well. The second thing that's happening parallelly is that the intelligence agencies which generated this intelligence input, which has turned out to be absolutely bang on and is a demonstration of how well things can work when intelligence is very specific and actionable, is that the Coast Guard, along with the Gujarat Police Special Operations Group, as well as the anti-terror agencies within Gujarat, will be trying to collate information regarding this particular operation, as well as any previous alerts they may have got in the Porbandar or surrounding area about any agencies or any groups that were expecting material, any individuals who were expecting some kind of suspicious material from Pakistan, and what they were planning to actually do with it. It's pretty nebulous, it's pretty broad at this point of time. It's an extremely complicated exercise that will be gone into at this point of time, both by the police and other agencies. But the specific incident of this hot pursuit on the high seas, 365 kilometers off the coast of Gujarat, is a dramatic one. You don't see it happen very often. But the simple fact that the intelligence agencies were able to get very, very specific, at least they say so, very specific, intelligence data about the presence of this ship, the possibility that it was carrying either explosives or contraband, a clear anti-India link is definitely established from what we know that the government tells us, Vedika.
Also, Shiv, this is an example of perfect coordination really between the intelligence agencies and the combat response, because it took less than an hour to really try and chase that boat down. Shiv, can you hear me? All right, it seems that we've lost that link with Shiv Arur, but we'll try and reconnect with him in minutes from now. But the details that we have are the following: that 4 people were on board that vessel suspected to be from Pakistan. A boat reportedly from Pakistan blew itself up off the Gujarat coast on New Year's Eve. Now, this operation lasted for about an hour on New Year's Eve, and there is a press release also talking about that operation. An intelligence-based midnight operation was conducted on the intervening night of the 31st of December and yesterday by the Indian Coast Guard ships and aircraft to intercept a suspect fishing boat in Arabian Sea near the Indo-Pak maritime boundary, approximately 365 kilometers from Porbandar. All right, I do have Admiral Tahilyani on the phone line with me. Admiral, thank you so much for speaking with us. This is something that we're really worried about, the news coming in and being confirmed by the Coast Guard of a suspected Pakistan vessel on high seas.
I have been retired for 27 years
Yes.
now. But in my time, what I used to do was to send one of our bigger ships to keep outside the territorial waters of Pakistan. And that was an adequate disincentive for them to do any. They complained, but they couldn't do very much about it because our ship was always in international water. They were not in their coastal belt. And I have, in fact, a photograph taken by a Pakistani submarine of an Indian ship and a Pakistani ship. When they found that they could not do anything and we were on the right, the Pakistani Navy chief had this photograph taken from one of their submarines and sent me a copy with his compliment. So the thing to do is to be absolutely in the front and not wait for the events to happen off your coast.
Right. But Admiral, would you say that this is an example of perfect coordination between the intelligence agency and the combat response?
That I am not competent to comment on because I don't know what the intelligence was, etc., etc.
All right, Admiral, thank you so much for speaking with us. That was former Navy Chief Admiral Tahilyani speaking with Headlines today. Shiv Arur, Deputy Editor, still with us live from the newsroom. Shiv, we're talking about the coordination really between the intelligence agency and the combat response because it took less than an hour really to chase down that vessel after the intelligence inputs were received.
That's right. The one thing you don't see very often, Vedika, especially in anti-terror operations, and I think that actually explains the fact that the government has actually, sort of sent out a press release to put out this information there as an example of how things work when they actually work right. 4 hours is what it took from the intelligence input to land till, till emergency response to actually kick in. Between the Marine Police, the Gujarat Police and the Coast Guard, a decision was quickly taken about precisely what needs to happen. The Navy was also obviously in the loop as far as, the unified operational structure that takes place during, maritime security operations post 2611. And this Coast Guard fast intercept vessel, sped out from Porbandar. It was already at sea and it went directly towards that particular area to intercept this vessel. So it's called the loop really, and how short the actual loop is from the time an intelligence alert actually lands till the time emergency response action actually took place.
Also, Shiv, what about the efforts being made to gather the material evidence?
Be extremely difficult. It's a good question. What I can confirm.
That big story that we are tracking here on Headlines today, a Pakistani vessel has been intercepted by the Coast Guard in Porbandar. The Coast Guard chased the suspicious Pakistani fishing vessel off the coast of Porbandar before the suspicious Pakistani fishing vessel blew itself up. The incident took place on the 31st of December midnight. The Coast Guard ship warned the fishing boat to stop for further investigation of the crew and cargo. However, the boat increased speed and tried to escape away from the Indian side of the maritime boundary. The hot pursuit continued for nearly an hour and the Coast Guard ship managed to stop the fishing boat after firing warning shots. 4 persons were seen on board who disregarded all warnings by the Coast Guard ship to stop and cooperate with investigation. Soon thereafter, the crew hid themselves in the below-deck compartment and set the boat on fire, which resulted in explosion and major fire on the boat. So that's the latest coming out that we do know of. That's the statement also by the Defence Ministry. Well, that chase did go on for an hour. It was about a 4-hour intervention really, and a difference of 4 hours between the intelligence input and the action that was taken on high seas. What we're also being told is that there is a slight chance of any survivors. Also, there were 4 people on board, and this incident apparently took place approximately 365 kilometers from Porbandar. Now, as per the intelligence inputs received on the 31st of December, a fishing boat from Porbandar near Karachi was planning some illicit transaction in the Arabian Sea. Based on the input, the Coast Guard aircraft undertook sea air coordinated search and located the suspect fishing boat. Thereafter, the Coast Guard ship on patrol in the area was diverted and intercepted the unlit boat at about midnight on the 31st of December in position 365 kilometers west-southwest of Porbandar. All right, now let's just bring you up to speed with the details of that operation that took place on December 31st midnight. Well, the Coast Guard ship warned the fishing boat to stop for further investigation of the crew and cargo. However, the boat increased speed and tried to escape away from the Indian side of maritime boundary. The hot pursuit continued for nearly an hour and the Coast Guard ship managed to stop the fishing boat after firing warning shots. 4 persons were seen on the boat who disregarded all warnings by the Coast Guard ship to stop and cooperate with the investigation. Soon thereafter, the crew hid themselves in the below deck compartment and set the boat on fire, which resulted in explosion and major fire on the boat. Now, due to darkness, bad weather and strong winds, the boat and persons on board could not be saved or recovered. The boat burnt and sank in the same position in the early hours of 1st January. Jugal Purohit now joins me on the phone line. Jugal, what's the latest that your sources within the Defence Ministry are telling you about this incident that took place on 31st midnight?
Well, Vedika, as we understand, this is an extremely serious incident, but it's also an incident which shows to you that there is intelligence inputs or other input which is coming in from the other side. For the last 2 months or so, as I understand, there were constant inputs about some kind of a maritime incursion taking place. Now, the government at least has labelled it as illicit transaction in the Arabian Sea. Now, whether this means in terms of arms, ammunition, narcotics or what is something which is still not sure or is not rather well known till now. But yes, there was an intelligence about this particular vessel coming in and around 10 p.m. on the 31st of December is when this vessel actually came extremely close to the international maritime boundary line between India and Pakistan of Gujarat. From there, for around 10 nautical miles, sailed into India. The Coast Guard was tailing it. Again, I'm given to understand that constant, interceptions were done. The Coast Guard also fired a few warning shots, and at a point, this particular vessel made an evasive maneuver and tried to skirt out of Indian waters back to where it came from, which is when a few more firing shots were fired, and in a sense, that vessel was completely, blocked from moving any further at sea. And at that point in time, according to the government's version, 4 personnel went, under in the basement part of that vessel, and a fire erupted, which was followed by explosion, and the boat sank. Now, after this, there is obviously a heightened sense of alert, but this incident has also, in a sense, left no trace whatsoever. We will perhaps never know what was the content on board the vessel, what were those personnel doing out there, why is it that they did not follow the orders, if they were to, actually claim they were innocent fishermen or something of that sort, because there have been multiple cases of Pakistani fishermen straying into Gujarat waters and then being arrested. So if they all can follow what the law enforcement agency like the Coast Guard or the Gujarat Police can order at sea, then why did this particular boat not? It kept on speeding for 10 nautical miles, which is not a short distance, after which it tried to evade the Coast Guard and return into Pakistani waters. Now, all of this is taking place at a time when there are several alerts. So obviously the picture is easy to understand, and the Coast Guard's action, of course, complete what was initiated by the intelligence agencies by picking up a contact of this sort. So all in all, even though there is mystery surrounding this particular vessel, its appearance and its subsequent submergence, what we do not know is, and what we will perhaps not know is this: what was the content it was carrying, what was the mission that it was a part of.
All right, Jugal, I'm going to come back to you in a few minutes from now, but that's the latest coming in. Well, we do have a statement from the Defence Ministry as well on a possible terror bid that was foiled off the Gujarat coast. Of course, that will be our top focus all evening today on Headlines Today. We're slipping to short.